Hi, everybody. It's Miss Kate from the library. I'm here today, joined by a very special person. I am with children's book author Hayley Barrett. Hi, Hayley.
Good morning, Kate. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We met Hayley through our mutual acquaintance, Nancy Lang, who we had on this series last time. And Hayley is also a very accomplished children's author, which is very exciting. So we thought we'd ask her some of the same questions we asked Nancy and get her thoughts on what it's like to write a book, or books, plural, and what it's like to go through the publishing process and, all that kind of good stuff that we talked about with Nancy. So welcome, Hayley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Miss Kate. I'm really glad to be here and glad to have this opportunity to talk about books and reading and education, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so thank you so much. So if you don't know at home, folks, Hayley's written some wonderful picture books for children. She's written a book called Baby Moon, which is a really, really sweet book. Oh, I think she's got it to hold up. Yep,
Yeah.
there it is. Yay. It's actually checked out of our library at the moment, so I couldn't bring it home. Baby Moon is about the time after we welcome a new baby into the family. And so it's really sweet. It's a lovely book. She's also written What Miss Mitchell Saw, another visual aid. Oh, beautiful.
It is.
Lovely. Which is a picture book biography about Mariah Mitchell.
It sparkles.
Oh, does it? Oh, you
Can't
don't
really
get that
tell.
effect with the ebook. That's so cool.
Sorry.
No. Thank you for pointing that out. See, this is the type of thing that we need because I'm reading the ebook. And while it's great to have that available on Overdrive, you
Yes.
missed out on effects like the cool, sparkly illustrations. And if you don't know, Miss Mitchell refers to Mariah Mitchell, who was a woman from Massachusetts in the late 19th century who discovered a comet, which is really, really cool. She was an astronomer. She was a college professor. She was way ahead of her time. So we're going to talk about Hayley with that. We're going to talk to Hayley about that later. And you also, Girl versus Squirrel.
That's right. I just got the hardcover, the first author's copy in the mail.
Oh, wow.
There
So
it
this is
is.
like new,
There it
fresh
is.
stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. We'll definitely have to talk about that at the end. We'll talk about what's coming up for you at the end and when people can expect that out.
Sure.
And then I did read on your website that your next book is called The Tiny Baker.
Right.
Okay. What's that about?
I can't show you any artwork for that yet, but I'm here
Okay.
to tell you that it is just exquisite. It's being done by a woman in the United Kingdom named Alison Jay, who has worked with Barefoot Books and other publishers before. Her work is just beautiful. And it's about a tiny baker that bakes for ants and radical community support. So perfect for a time like this when people need help. But that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
really
Well, we'll get to what you're working on next later, but let me go back to the beginning.
great.
Did you always want to be a writer? Did you write when you were a kid? How did this all come about for you?
I am not one of the people that knew they always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a lot of things. I wanted to be a horse trainer. Later on, I wanted to be, I remember saying in college, like, maybe I should be an editor. And now I look back and think, yes, you should be an editor. But the thing I wanted to be most of all, and that I pursued for a while, but I did not complete it, was I wanted to be a certified nurse midwife. So I did go to school for that. I was at the University of Pennsylvania and I finished my bachelor's in nursing, but then life happened and plans changed and I did not complete the training, but that is where Baby Moon came from. So all of my interests sort of feed into what I'm doing now, which is writing for young readers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So when did you decide you wanted to be an author? So you went through basically your whole childhood and then you came into your adult life.
Yeah, I would
And
write a little
then
poetry. I would do this, but some people are very committed to their writing. It was only much later that I've always been a bit of a storyteller. I love to tell stories. I love to collect them and remember them and think about them. And so I think that's where it came from, the desire to
okay.
write. And also really it came from a desire to reclaim the word baby moon, which was originally coined by a British birth worker and has come to mean a lot of different things in the culture. And it really was important to me to give that word back to families. And so that's kind of
Yeah,
really serious interest in writing
because I think
picture came from.
the first time I came across that word, it was more about, I mean, when I was having my own daughter 6 years
Mhm.
ago, I think it was very much used in a popular sense to mean like that special vacation you can take
Right.
before you have a baby
That's right.
as like a couple. But what I really liked about your story was it was really about giving a family time to integrate a
Yeah.
new person, which
Yeah.
I think is it can be very challenging, either when you go from no children to one child, or even especially one child to more children.
It's
That's a
very
big
different.
transition.
And so that was what I wanted to do was broaden that conversation and sort of take the word back for the people that originally coined it and
Yeah, and not
make
make
it
it
a
about a
useful
vacation.
term, right? I've racked my brains to think of another term for a vacation before the birth, which is of course a perfectly fine idea. I'm thinking, I don't know, a bump jump, like
Bump jump, I like that.
there's got to be another name for that, but I know what you mean. So it became, people that work in the birth industry, doctors and midwives are busy and they're up all night, and this word just kind of, moved into other areas and came to mean other things. So that was really when I first became very serious about writing. There were a couple of stories that I began working in earnest, and that was one of them.
That's really great to see how, though, that even if you weren't a writer from being from a childhood, you really use your inspiration, your everyday experiences, it sounds like, to
Right.
inspire your writing.
That's right.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
I
Hmm.
think that's a great tip, especially for kids who want to start writing. I
Oh
think a lot of
yes.
people don't know where to start, or a lot of kids don't know where to start. And I know the sort of advice people give is write what you know, but this is really an example of that.
Yes. And I also like to write what I don't know.
Hmm.
So I'm not
Hmm.
an astronomer. I
Okay.
grew up on the island of Nantucket. I'm a reader, and
Yep.
in terms of reading, a little bit of a researcher. Like there's
Hmm.
nothing I like to do better than learn about things. And so that, that helps me too, that I'm interested in a lot of things, and I know through reading I can learn a lot of things, and then that can feed my writing. So I'm pretty sure that when the first place I heard about Mariah Mitchell, I'm sure I was a child. And it was
Yeah.
probably in a Ranger Rick magazine or something like that. And
Hmm.
then she just stuck with me. And then when it became time to write about her, I started reading to
Well,
learn.
it sounds like you might be a little bit of a closet librarian, because that's kind of how we work too. But I think you see yourself as a story collector.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get these little nuggets, then they sort of
That's
stick back
right.
in the brain, and then all of a sudden you start researching and researching and researching. So, like you said, even though you're not an astronomer, it's really fun to kind of dig into that subject a little bit and
Oh,
read
yeah,
about Mariah's experience of being a self-taught astronomer.
that's right.
For those of you who don't know, Mariah Mitchell was a woman who was born on Nantucket in the 19th century. Her father was a really interesting man. It sounds like he was a very learned man, very educated man, and encouraged her to be the same way. And he taught her all about astronomy and following the stars and how to help whalers navigate in the ocean, which, of course, the whaling industry was huge in Nantucket at that time. And she really took that on, and she actually became a librarian herself, which is super interesting. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
she was the first librarian of the Nantucket Athenaeum, which is so
that's
cool.
right. And was for years and years. She was 18 when she first started that job. And she was, approached by the people that were starting the Nantucket Athenaeum. And they asked, this young woman if she would take over. And she did. And she did that
Yeah.
for many, many years before she left the island to go to Vassar College.
Yeah.
So,
What was the most surprising thing you learned about her life in your research?
oh, I learned so many things. And that's the fun thing about research is I could have told a million stories about Mariah Mitchell. You know, how you enter a story, how where you choose to start is such an important decision. And I easily could have started at Vassar College, where she was the first professor hired by Matthew Vassar. I could have started that she was the first woman admitted to the Vatican Observatory in Rome, where other
Mhm.
more famous female astronomers had been turned away. Mariah was able to go and visit. It was at the Collegia Romana at the time, or near there, on the
Mhm.
roof of the Church of Sant'Ignazio in Rome. And she was the
Oh,
first
wow.
person admitted to the Vatican Observatory. Many, many things. She traveled the world. So I could have entered the story in a lot of different ways. But the medal really captured my attention, and particularly because it was
Yeah.
the first major discovery by any American, woman or man. And she really put American astronomy on the radar of world astronomy. So that was a huge
Yeah,
accomplishment.
definitely. And being a woman at that
Yeah.
time makes it even extra, gives it an extra boost.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think, when she won the medal and, I know there was like a little dispute whether or not she was the first one
Yes.
to observe the comet. So there was always a little controversy kind of surrounding her, which I mean, I think is somewhat understandable given that I'm sure a lot of people weren't thrilled to see a woman in astronomy at the time.
I think they were very surprised, and especially because it was, she was known to other local astronomers, but she
Hmm.
wasn't known worldwide.
Hmm.
So they were surprised that this young woman, she was 29, that lived on a tiny little island, was the first
Hmm.
person to see this comet and could also prove it mathematically that she had seen
Hmm.
it first. The third person to see the comet was also a woman, a German astronomer. So there were other people looking for this medal, but it came down to Maria Mitchell and Father Francisco de Vico, who was the head of the Vatican Observatory at the time.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
but I really love how science works in this story, the way science should work,
Hmm.
which is the math is incontrovertible. She was able to
Right.
prove
Right.
that's
And it didn't matter that she was a woman.
that's
Like
right.
she had the
That did not
proof, she
matter.
had the math, and that was it.
The math mattered. Hmm.
Yeah.
So
I know I do love that part of the story too,
exciting.
that like she was able to prove it. It's not just, yeah, because that really settled the debate.
It wasn't
Um,
just hearsay, right?
right,
That she
right,
proved it.
exactly. And so, I mean, one question I asked Nancy, because this is something that surprised me about publishing. I was thinking about the beautiful illustrations in your books.
Mhm.
And as an author, I assumed before I knew anybody who was an author, I assumed that you sort of were able to, speak with your publisher and choose who you wanted as your illustrator. And it was like this amazing collaboration. And I'm sure it is a collaboration, but at least from Nancy's experience, she didn't really have a choice. Her publisher kind of reached out and found somebody who would be a good match for her. And she, then the illustrator has their time to create their vision. Were you surprised by that process, or have you had a different experience?
I knew I had been, I suppose, taught by my colleagues that that was what I should expect to
Okay.
be involved at all. But
Hmm.
been very fortunate in that for all three of my books, which are Girl versus Squirrel is coming soon, but for all three that are in existence, that I was able to have some input into the conversation about choosing an illustrator. And the thing about Diana Sudica was when my editor called me she had the idea of contacting Diana Sudica. And when she called me and we were looking at the imagery to get together, I found that I was already familiar with Diana Sudica's artwork. I had pinned it onto a private Pinterest page for what Miss Mitchell saw. So I already had some of her images collected
Oh,
sort of
wow.
board for the book. So I was very, very happy. And then about 20 minutes after the editor approached Diana Sudica, Diana made artwork. I have it pinned downstairs. A picture of it is on my bulletin board that is basically in the book. So she was the perfect person for the job. She responded
Wow.
immediately to the challenge of it and had her own vision about how to proceed. So that was very
Wow. And I mean, if
yeah.
for everybody who's watching at home, well, I currently have the book checked out in Overdrive, but if you go to the library's website and you can find Overdrive, or if you have it on your phone, you can use the Overdrive app or the Libby app. You can actually check out the ebook of what Miss Mitchell saw, and you'll be able to see Diana's beautiful artwork. And it really does. I really love it. It gets the essence. It's very New Englandy in a way, but
Yep.
it's also like it really connects you to the night sky and the sense of wonder that she must have had.
Yes. I
Yeah.
agree that I think that Diana and I were a great, they talk about with picture books, the pairing of the author and illustrator and what it's like when that pairing is correct and when we're mutually supportive of each other's work so that, my words support Diana's art and vice versa. That's
Mhm.
really what happened with what Miss Mitchell saw. And I'm so gratified and thrilled about it. Um, Diana, knew exactly what to do. She and I both had a strong attachment to creating a sense of place in the book. So we
Yes.
got a sense
Hmm.
of being on the island of Nantucket, and
Hmm.
what that was like for young Mariah and what it meant for her work. So
Hmm.
that was the most important place in her life. And she's buried
Yeah.
there now. She's back where she belongs on
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. And she
Mhm.
never, I mean, she did travel the world, but she never really moved somewhere else. I mean, I know she lived in other parts of Massachusetts for a little while with her siblings.
That's right.
But it was very important for her to live in this area
That's right.
in New England and kind of stick close to her family,
Yeah, she was very close with
even though she was.
nieces and nephews. She was a beloved aunt.
Mhm.
The only other place she really lived was at Vassar College, which was Vassar Female Seminary in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yes.
And she lived right in, it was not terribly comfortable, the observatory that was
Oh,
built for her by Matthew Vassar that you can still see at Vassar. Now it's a
wow.
building used for the education department, I believe, but it's a beautiful little observatory right in the middle of campus, and that was built for Mariah Mitchell. So she did live
Wow.
there for many years. And after her mother passed away, her dad lived there with her as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Um,
she trained a lot of America's prominent female astronomers.
oh, wow. That's an incredible legacy to have, and
So cool.
especially, yeah, that really is. So you've talked a little bit how you get your ideas, like things kind
Mhm.
of stick in your brain and then you do
Mhm.
more research. What is your actual, like, once you're like, okay, this is my idea, this is the story I want to tell, is it a fairly linear process for you in order to write, or do you kind of research a little bit, write a little bit, research a little bit, go on to another project, or do you kind of do a lot of things at once, or do you sort of focus on one thing at a time?
I I will sort of flit from manuscript to manuscript a little bit, but once I begin writing in earnest, it's as linear as writing a picture book can be. There's lots agonizing over every decision because of course a lot about a picture book is the effort to keep it very condensed. But with narrative nonfiction, I want to put as many facts in there as I can without, making it too heavy or too clumsy to do as a read aloud or for a young person to read for themselves. But from then on, it's pretty linear. It's mostly for me about finding the right place to start a story.
Yeah.
And often the first thing that will usually, and this is not always typical, but the first thing that comes to me is usually a title. I don't know.
Oh,
Not
really?
this is different from what other people do, but so far all of my books have come as a title first. And
Wow.
what Miss
Okay.
Mitchell saw came to me, and then I sort of wanted to start it in a very sort of traditional, almost a fairy tale-ish way. There's sort of a once upon a
Yes.
time quality to it, and
Yes,
that's
there
what
is. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
then
And I
I
think
just
Diana's art also really supports that,
oh
you
yeah,
know?
she really did. She wrapped
Yeah.
that baby in stars, and it looks so
Yes, she did. It looks
beautiful.
beautiful. You
Mhm.
have to check out the artwork in this book
I
for the
can hold it
folks
up
who are
if you want
watching.
any time, Kate. If you want me to show the illustrations, I can show them.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to
Um,
show a couple illustrations
I'll
from the book
show.
just so people can see what they should be checking out?
There's. I have to peek around so I can see what I'm showing. But there's little
Oh, yep. Mhm.
little baby Mariah with.
Which is great that you put in the pronunciation because it's spelled in a way that most of us would traditionally say Maria,
That's right.
Maria, but it's actually pronounced, which I learned as well, Mariah, which I thought that was a great detail.
That was another real reason for me to write this book. Was I thought her name was Maria Mitchell too.
Hmm.
And when I learned it was Mariah Mitchell, that is when I became truly determined to include to make that part of the book
Hmm.
that she really cannot be given her due in the history of science and the history of the United States unless people know her name. Um, so that was
Yeah.
something that was important to me. And now, when I visit school groups, I will take special care to teach youngsters that are watching how to say her name. I'll have them
Yeah.
repeat it back to me.
Yep.
And then I know that there are hundreds of youngsters in the United States that know Mariah Mitchell's name. And that makes me very happy.
Yeah. Well, she's an amazing person.
Yes, she's amazing.
Um, so now that you have your process down, like, what does your family think about your writing? I know you're a mom of two grown-up
I
kids.
am. They're big
Uh,
people now. My
yeah.
daughter,
What does your family think about all this?
they are thrilled and very supportive and very proud of me. I work with both of my children. Sometimes when I'm writing, if I have particular questions or I want their opinion, I will ask
Uh-huh.
them. Yeah, everybody's super supportive. And now my daughter is a middle school teacher. She's an English language development teacher here in
Oh,
Massachusetts.
wow.
And now she was in California and now here. And I've actually been able to visit her classroom as an author and her
Oh,
school
that's
as
so
an author
exciting.
is a ton of fun to go and work with kids and talk to them about, just like we're talking about now, about writing and reading
Yeah.
and research and why all that's fun and
Yeah.
important.
What would your best tips for kids be, if they want to start writing? Nancy and I kind of talked about how, maybe when we were all kids, it was like you and your notebook or like you showing your stories to maybe your parents or your family.
Yes.
Now we have the internet and we all have computers and devices, and like it's so easy to get your work out there. What
Yeah.
are the best ways for kids to start?
I mean, the best, it's classic advice, but I think the best way is to start is to read a lot.
Hmm.
Read everything you can get your hands on. Read whatever, really whatever interests you, whether it's cars or chickadees or um, I was on the
Dinosaurs
today
or
and
princesses.
someone who's a biologist that's fascinated with yeast was talking all about how yeast and sourdough starter is made. So that is that person's interest. So whatever it is that interests you, I think read about
Hmm.
that deeply. And also I would encourage young people to let themselves be interested. Like
Hmm.
encourage that interest in something so that you sort of fan the flames of your interest so that they
Mm.
can come to the best possible flowering. And then as far as writing is concerned, I think just write whatever appeals to you, move around, try poetry, try nonfiction, try fiction, mix it up. If you're an
Hmm.
artist, do the drawings. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I think a lot of kids really take a lot of joy in
yeah, take
illustrating their
joy
own
in it.
work.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So before we go, because I know we can't keep this interview super long, but what do you have going on next? Tell us about Girl versus Squirrel and the Tiny Baker, which we talked about earlier.
Yes. So Girl versus Squirrel was supposed to be published on June 3rd, but
Okay.
because, with all of these, this confusing and complicated situation going right now, it has been pushed to August 11th, which I'm perfectly fine with because
Okay,
everybody
cool.
should be safe and take care of themselves. And,
Stay
that's
home.
perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But it's coming from Holiday House. There it is,
Oh, lovely.
illustrated by a woman from the Chicago area named Renee Andriani, who did a great job. This is Pearl,
Beautiful.
and she's
Oh,
trying to keep a squirrel away from her teacup full of peanuts. And there's the
a very
squirrel,
difficult task.
not so easily daunted. So it's sort of a
Yeah.
meeting of the minds as
Who's gonna win?
these two creatures, come to an understanding.
Oh, very
So yeah,
cool.
that's Girl versus Squirrel, and then the Tiny Baker, which I can't show you, is
Hmm.
about being illustrated by Allison Jay, who lives in the
Hmm.
United Kingdom. It's really the artwork I've seen is really beautiful, and it's about a tiny baker. I'll let you use your imagination about what the baker looks like. A
Okay.
tiny baker that bakes for ants, and catastrophe happens in the beautiful little tea room's kitchen. So it's
Okay.
also about community support. What happens
Oh,
when you can't help yourself and you need your friends to help you?
to help you.
Yeah,
Oh, that could
that's
not
what it's
come at a
about.
more perfect time.
So that one's coming sometime this fall. We hope, but
Oh,
we
that's
don't know.
awesome.
We'll
That's
see.
amazing.
And then I've got a few more pieces that are out to publishers for sale that we'll see,
Oh,
that I
wow.
hope are books
I
someday.
hope come to fruition.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if you are home right now and you want to use the library's ebook service called Overdrive, you can download the Libby app on your phone. You need your library card for that. If you don't have a library card, you can get a digital library card by going to Minuteman Library Network's website. So just Google Minuteman Library Network
Mhm.
library card, and you will find it. And people can sign up for our library card in our network. They can access all of our digital services immediately, and they can download your amazing book that's available on Overdrive,
Oh,
What Miss Mitchell Saw.
yeah.
Hayley, thank you so much for your time. We really
So
appreciate
well,
it.
thank you. I appreciate it too. And I
Oh,
wish everybody happy time and safe time reading and following their interests.
very good. Thank you so much. Have
Great.
a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.